Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our June 22nd council meeting. As we are officially into summer 2020. It is a good time to remind everyone that while the weather is nice and we want to enjoy it, we are still in the midst of a pandemic. Let us take this moment to reflect on how far we have come through the pandemic and be thankful that we are all Wilmot stronger together. Thank you. And land acknowledgement from Councillor Hallman.
We have gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should only take what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, we are reminded of the importance of this connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community.
Thank you, Councillor Hallman. Are there any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? And seeing none again. So the first item is the minutes of the council meeting held June 8th, 2020, and the recommendation that the minutes of the following meetings be adopted as presented. Council meeting June 8, 2020. Moved by Councillor Fisher, Councillor Gordick. All in favor? Thank you. That's passed. Oh, I should have asked if anyone had spotted any omissions or corrections, or seeing none. Thank you. So the first item up is a public meeting. So this is a public meeting in respect of zone change application 2020, correction, application 0220, Jeffrey Van Gazel, 407 Fairview Street, New Hamburg. We will hear all interested people who wish to speak in this application. If the decision of council is appealed to the local planning appeal tribunal, the tribunal has the power to dismiss an appeal if you do not speak at the public meeting or make written submission before the bylaw is passed. I now declare the public meeting open. Mr. Martin, you are going to take the lead on this.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. So this application was originally circulated earlier this year. Public meeting was scheduled to be held in March, but was obviously delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We have circulated the application again for public comments and have received none. We had received none in March and didn't receive any through this current circulation. The application is proposing to create 2 apartment units within a 2nd-story addition to an existing house on Fairview Street. The updates to the Township Bylaw currently underway will ultimately, if approved, allow for 2 apartments, 1 in a house, 1 in an accessory structure. This individual wishes to have both units within their house, so the application is therefore required. But as outlined, there are no comments or concerns that have been raised through the circulation, and staff recommend approval of the application.
Okay, thank you. Are there any technical questions of Mr. Martin on the application? And just a reminder too that persons addressing council as delegations at this meeting are required to leave their names and addresses, which will become part of the public record. And you are hereby advised that this information may be posted on the township's official website along with your email address if provided. Okay, so we have 1 registered delegation. Jeffrey Van Gessel.
Yeah, I'm here.
Good. You may go ahead and speak, Jeff.
Okay. So the reason why we're doing this is just with the price of houses still going up and everything. I got 4 kids in my family, and so we are dreaming up a way to have a generational house is kind of the end goal here. But I also own a construction company and believe strongly in having a more energy efficient home. So we're trying to figure out a way, how can a family of, middle class family, mediocre income, afford to do an energy efficient build or renovation of their current older property. And so, yeah, the way we're doing this, we figured, I feel like this will be a good model for other families. We're going to be able to do this renovation, get to net zero, and we're going to be able to provide 2 units in town here, rental units, until my kids grow up. And then hopefully, if my kids still love me at the end there, they'll take over the bottom half, and I could live in the 1-bedroom upstairs with my wife. And so that's our plan with this project.
Who has pictures? Oh, so how do we get them up? Do you want your photos to be presented?
Yeah, sure.
And I was gonna state, Jeff, I'm sure that if you're going to provide your children with a house, they're going to love you a lot for a long time.
That's what we're hoping for.
Yes, yes.
Which would you prefer first, Jeff? The video or the diagrams?
Yeah, why don't you play the video? Do I have to click the button here, start my video? Oh, you got it. So right now, it's just a little 1,100 square foot bungalow. And so we're not enlarging the footprint of the building at all. We're just going straight up, and we're super insulating the whole exterior, putting in a 100% air barrier. And then on the top floor, there'll be a 2-bedroom and a 1-bedroom unit. So.
Very good.
Yeah. And yeah, so that's the second floor there with the 2-bedroom and the 1-bedroom. And this is this shows the wall. So my existing house is actually made of a product called Durasol. So it's like a sound barrier panel on the side of the highway that you see. I think it's the same company that makes it. So it's an extremely soundproof house. But we're adding 9.5 inches outrigger onto the outside of it, as well as a full air barrier. And we're going to dense pack that full of recycled cellulose. So we're going to have an effective 42 wall or something like that. So that should help us get to net zero. That's the goal.
Very good. Are there any questions of Jeff? Councillor Gordick?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, it's just a small one. I just was curious about the construction. Will there be changes to the parking? Because we always know that there's limited parking on some of the streets. Will you be making any changes to the driveway or parking for adding the extra units on there?
Yeah, I plan to add 2 more spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Councillor Fenning?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Jeff, I think this is a great project, and I hope to see more after you get this one done, and hopefully other people can see how it's done and follow suit.
Right on.
Yeah, it's always good to have a good example of how we can help save the planet. And see no other questions. So I will declare the public meeting as closed. So Jeff, that will come back. I'm not sure when that will be back. Can you answer that, Mr. Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. The recommendation with the report is for approval. So
Oh, yeah, sorry.
it
Couldn't
would
find it.
be dealt with tonight. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the recommendation that council approve zone change application 0220 made by Jeffrey Van Gessel affecting 407 Fairview Street to amend the zoning of the subject property to permit 2 additional dwelling units within the main residential building on the property. Moved by Councillor Hallman, Councillor Fenning. All in favor? 5 hands. Thank you. That is carried. Thank you, Jeff, for coming in and making that presentation, and good luck with that, and have fun with your kids.
All right, thanks.
So the next item is the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that council wants to pull to have a discussion on? Councillor Gordick.
Don't want to pull, just have a clarification question.
Okay, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, to the chief. I just wanted to clarify what the actual definition is, and you probably have answered this before just because we get this report regularly, but the slot number 98 where it says assistance not required by other agency, what is the definition of that? Just because there are calls for that category. So I'm just kind of curious as to what that means. Thank you.
Go ahead, Chief.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. That particular category is sort of a catch-all to, maybe police called us for assistance or something, and then it turns out that they chose to cancel it and no longer required our help. Or it could be EMS sometimes as well. It's one of those sort of, we got to catch those type of calls somewhere.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You, any other, anyone else wish to address it? An item on the consent agenda? Okay. So the recommendation that report number FD 2020-02 be received for information purposes. Moved by Councillor Fenning, Councillor Gerber. All in favor? 5 hands. Cool. Thank you. That is carried. First item on the regular reports is Bridge Street Bridge. Or no, I'm sorry. First quarter activity report.
So you should be on a municipal asset management.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, Municipal Asset Management Program. Where the heck are you? Here we are. No. Too many papers. That's under
Corporate services.
Corporate Services. Go ahead, Counselor, Mr. Kelly. Almost fulfill your dream.
Someday, sir. Through you, Mayor Armstrong, this report discusses the recently launched intake to FCM's Municipal Asset Management Program. Wilmot was successful in a previous application under Intake 1 back in 2017, where funding was approved to establish our strategic asset management policy, create condition assessment protocols, and develop a data collection templates for our asset registry. So the program offers grant funding as well as training and capacity building activities to increase the skills within municipalities to make asset management planning sustainable into the long term. Since the first intake, Wilmot has grown significantly in asset management capacity and knowledge. Over that time, we brought on board in-house full-time asset management coordinator held by Leslie Nanabush, who's present for the meeting tonight. Over the past year, we've expanded our asset management working group to include additional staff from public works and engineering, as well as parks, facilities, and recreation services to broaden the scope of coverage that we have in the asset management working group, which meets on a bi-weekly basis. In addition, over the past year, I myself have held a board position as the Ontario representative with the Canadian Network of Asset Managers. And finally, but most importantly, two of our staff members, Leslie Nanabush, our asset management coordinator, and Ashton Romany, our manager of finance and deputy treasurer, were both successful in completing a 2-year program and are now certified asset management professionals. So a lot of growth in Wilmot, and we want to continue that with this application. The next part of our asset management roadmap will see the township embark on risk criticality modeling and the infusion of life cycle activities into our whole asset management planning framework. This will require input from all departments, and we're fortunate to continue to have the assistance of Public Sector Digest, who will share their asset management expertise with us in the form of meetings and training and workshops as we move forward. So the estimated eligible costs for these works are $86,300 with a maximum contribution of $50,000 from the FCM program. Remaining funds were previously allocated as part of the 2020 capital budget. And as a requirement of the program, we need council support through a resolution, and we're seeking that tonight. So happy to take any questions. Both myself and Ms. Nanabush are here.
Any comments or questions from anyone? Councillor Fenning.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I'd read this before and didn't have the question. Now I have one. Just wondering what, if any, plan we have in case we aren't successful in, and I mean, I know that you've done a great job writing grant proposals and been successful many times, but is there an alternative should we not be successful?
Mr. Kelly.
Sure. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Great question, Councillor Fenning. The Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, or OSIF funding that we receive annually, can be used towards hard infrastructure projects or asset management capacity building. We have committed through our 10-year capital forecast to complete the asset management roadmap and reach the requirements of OREG 58817. So should we be unsuccessful, we would just continue to utilize OSIF funding as we have in the past, without impacting the levy for these works.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Seeing none, then the recommendation that council direct staff to apply for the grant opportunity from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Municipal Asset Management Program for asset management capacity building, and further that the Township of Wilmot commits to conducting the following activities within the 2020 as submitted to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Municipal Asset Management Program to advance our asset management program. 1, asset risk framework and development, asset life cycle framework and development, and asset management training, systems, software training, and staff workshops. That the Township of Wilmot commit $36,300 from the 2020 capital budget toward the cost of these works as per council approval report finance 2020-07. And that is moved by Councillor Fisher, Councillor Gordick. All in favor? 5 hands. Thank you. That's carried. Too many papers. You got to cut out the papers. Next item is the waiving who?
Waiving of penalties.
Who are we waving at? Okay, from Development Services, the waiving of penalties. Mr. Okrafka?
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. The building bylaw 2019-52 requires a penalty be paid if residents are caught building without permits. Doubling of the permit fee is seen as a deterrent to construction without a permit, and then generally works well as a, again, as a deterrent tool rather than formal laying of charges under the Building Code Act. Over the last 3 months, obviously, business operations have been a little different. Building division has continued to do its work over the last 3 months with some breaks due to provincial regulation as to what constitutes essential construction. During that period, there has been a couple of occasions where construction began without permits. Recognizing the financial and economic relief that Council has extended in other circumstances, such as the paying of taxes, staff are recommending consideration and support for the temporary waiving of the double permit fee requirement. Again, only for those projects that started between March 17th and June 15th to recognize the 3-month period where services were from time to time not fully operational. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments on that? I think it's a good plan. Seeing none, the recommendation that report DS 2020-10 be received for information, and that the township extend additional financial and economic support to residents and businesses by A, waiving penalties, the doubling of permit fees for projects which commenced prior to the issuance of building permits, initiated without permits during the period March 17th, 2020 to June 15th, 2020. Moved by Councillor Fenning, Councillor Hallman. No further comments or questions. All in favor? See 5 hands. Thank you very much. Next item is from Public Works, Bridge Street. Mr. Molyneux.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. This report outlines the award of consulting engineering services for the Bridge Street Bridge Municipal Class Environmental Assessment to Case Martin Associates Limited. Earlier this year, with the provincial and federal funding partners confirmed for this project under the Investment in Canada Infrastructure Program, this project was moved forward into our work program for the request for consulting services to look at project opportunities, to look at public consultation and recommendation for a solution under the Environmental Assessment Act process. The scope identified for this stage of this project includes the EA and preliminary design only at this time. There were 10 plan takers and 3 bids received at the time of the close. K-Smart provided the most balanced proposal with technical and pricing scores. Their experience, obviously, in the Grand River watershed and their experience consulting with various stakeholders, including First Nations, is required under these types of structure replacement projects and under the Environmental Assessment Act. And these were considered key components to the technical qualifications for this project. They have a valuable experience with other key project elements of historical, cultural, and financial considerations as well. So following tonight's award of consulting services, a public notice will be issued to stakeholders for the public process to begin. And the public process will identify things such as opportunities for consultation and for stakeholders to comment, and further project timelines. There will be public meetings held as part of this process. And finally, at the end of the review process, there will be a staff report returned to council with the recommendation for the support of the preferred alternative in the final process of the project. Following that stage of the project, then we will enter into detailed design and construction. However, that is not part of this scope of work. That will be considered at a later date for council consideration. Be happy to answer any questions should you have any.
Questions? Seeing none?
No.
Oh, sorry, Kent.
Sorry, I forgot to do the thing because my panel's not showing properly, guys.
All right.
My apologies.
Not a problem. Go ahead,
Thank you.
Cheryl.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, to Mr. Mullenhouse, just a quick one. With COVID and some of the restrictions that are on, is there a time frame to use this money? And if so, is that being taken into account? Do we have restrictions on how and when we spend the money? And is that going to put some extra pressure on our staff with reaching some of the stakeholders for the design element of it?
Go ahead, Mr. Mullenhouse.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, with consideration to the current COVID environment, we don't anticipate that there will be issues with consultation and with reaching out. As far as processes, obviously, for communication that we've established, we believe that there are ways to reach out, certainly in writing still, but if there were meetings or such that needed to be held, we don't anticipate there will be any sort of those types of issues in connecting with stakeholders and with any other public interest that may be involved. So no, I don't believe that there will be any sort of pressures or additional impacts for staff to run through that process.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Seeing none, the recommendation that RFP 2020-18 be awarded to K-Smart Associates Limited for the municipal class environmental assessment EA and preliminary engineering design for Bridge Street Bridge 34/B-T9 as per the proposal submitted on May 26, 2020 in the amount of $46,247.95 plus HST. Moved by Councillor Gordick, Councillor Hallman. All in favor? C5, that's good. It's carried. Thank you. Next item is the award of dump trucks. Mr. Mullenhouse, you're still up.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. This report outlines a process for purchasing of 2 single-axle trucks complete with snow attachments. This year, as approved by council in the budget process, we plan to replace 2 trucks during this purchasing cycle. This was done to start the order process sooner, as some of these large trucks can take up to a year and a bit more to have for delivery once award is approved. This is a fairly straightforward report. I'd be certainly happy to answer any questions should you have any. Obviously, with this award to All Truck International Limited, both units would be coming from this supplier. So certainly, again, if you have any questions, I'd be here to answer.
Councillor Hallman.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Mr. Mullenhughes. I'm just wondering if these attachments for the plows, are we replacing existing equipment and selling off the previous equipment, or is this an addition to?
Go ahead, Mr. Mullenhughes.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, typically with our purchasing process, we do take into consideration disposal of the asset, that being the truck and any attachments that come with it. So this replacement speaks to the replacement certainly of the trucks themselves, as well as the attachments that we currently have.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Okay. No further comments or questions? Okay, the recommendation that RFP 2020-05 be awarded to All Truck International Truck Centers to supply and deliver 2 single axle dump trucks with cab, chassis, and snowplow attachments as per the proposal dated June 3rd, 2020, in the amount of $523,834 plus HST. Any comments? None. All in who, a mover and a seconder on that? Councillor Gordick and Councillor Fanning. All in favor? 5 hands. Cool. That's carried. Thank you. So the next one is the procurement for Phase B Pool Tile Grout Project. Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mayor, to Council. This is a request. You heard the original report. It was an emergency procurement to get the first phase of this project done. Although pools were included in stage 2 of the reopening plan, there is a lot of work yet to be done with respect to protocols, and reopening is not something that we're planning to do in the imminent future. We are looking at when we can possibly do that, but in the meantime, we would like to finish the tile grout project and complete the deck portion. The contractors are ready to start tomorrow if council approves this report tonight. So then we would be able to start to look at timelines for when we think we can reopen the pool. There have been questions about the pool with respect to reopening. If we open under stage 2, we would only be able to open at 25% capacity. So that creates a lot of additional planning. So that's one of the reasons we'd like to get this finished. We won't require a fall shutdown if we do this now, and that will move this project along and it'll be completed. The caveat with this one is that this is a 2021 capital budget project that we're looking at, and we're asking for it to be expedited to be done during the this current closure. So Mr. Kelly can help me, but this is essentially a pre-approval into the 2021 capital program. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Hallman?
First, before I threw the mayor to Ms. Jackson. Thank you for this. I'm happy to see this. The one thing I wanted to add was during Mr. Nanskiville's time, I had discussed about handrails for some people who had been reaching out regularly about concerns about access to the pool. And I just thought with the timing of this, is this something that you are able to look at during this time while the pool's already closed?
I will look into that, Councillor Hallman, through the mayor. I'm not familiar with what that request is, but I'm sure that staff may be familiar. So I'll certainly look into it and see what the request was.
Thank you.
Or we can talk offline if you like.
Yes. And then just another thing with this, I did receive a few emails today from people who were excited to see this moving forward with the pool being closed. So I wanted to pass on that there's community support for getting this the pool to prime condition for community use again.
Very good. Thank you. Councillor Gerber.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Armstrong. Through you to Ms. Jackson. Appreciate the extra information. I mean, I'm not necessarily as familiar with some of the requirements of what phase 2 reopening would mean, but certainly with 25% capacity, it certainly wouldn't be serving, the same function that it would be serving regularly. So it sort of adds some weight to the fact that it makes sense to get this work done now. And I know that one of the other facilities we've had lots of questions about, of course, is the splash pad. And since I know we have record numbers of viewers this evening, as always, I just thought I would give you an opportunity to perhaps update people on the latest announcement on splash pad reopening.
Sure, I'm happy to, Councillor. Just through the mayor, we just released about an hour ago a press release, and it has been issued on Twitter that we will be opening the splash pad this Friday. The hours have been reduced. Normally we would run 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. In order to make the most use of staff time, because we will be staffing the splash pad to help assist with controlling numbers and managing physical distancing. We've condensed the hours to 11:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. 7 days a week. So a special thank you to the Aquatic staff led by Angela Bilsma for pulling together a schedule and making this work. We have fenced the area, so if you drive by, you will see beautiful orange snow fence. But it will work. It will work really well, and folks will line up at one entrance area and exit out the other. A few extra rules: we will be clearing the space every 50 minutes, and allowing us time to disinfect the splash pad in between groups of users. And the number 50 will be subject to change if we find we aren't able to manage the physical distancing, and we may have to reduce that. But we're going to give it a go, and it starts on Friday. So hopefully we see lots of folks out.
That's good news. Councillor Fenning.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong, to Ms. Jackson. I am happy to hear, I was very happy to see that the splash pad is reopening soon. There have been a lot of questions about that in the community and the pool as well. I'm wondering if the length of time that this work on the pool is going to extend the closure. Maybe this is a bit of a complicated question, so feel free to tell me. You're gonna have to follow up later. That's fine. But originally we had intended to close for 5 weeks in the fall. And just wondering if there's a time savings because we had already been closed, so that we in total will not be closed as long as we would have been, if that makes sense.
Through Mayor Armstrong, we won't be closed at all in September now. So assuming we're able to reopen and we are able to program, with a reasonable capacity, we won't close at all in September. That is the goal. So by doing this project now, we won't have to do that fall shutdown at all. That's the goal.
Thank you. Mr. Fisher.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, to Ms. Jackson. PPL, is that one of the only companies that works on pool grouting, or would it be the COVID that limits how many quotes you would get?
Through the mayor, when we initially quoted, or when we initially sent the RFP out, we had interest from 3 companies. 2 of them backed out due to COVID because they were having challenges getting the resources in place to be able to do this. PPL is a very reputable aquatic company, and they have done work in our pool before. So we're certainly confident that they can do the job. And we could go back out for additional quotes, but I don't anticipate there would be any savings, particularly during COVID.
Great, thanks very much.
All right, thank you. No further questions. Okay, so the recommendation that the extension of the existing contract with PPL Aquatic Fitness and Spa Group for Phase B of the pool tile grout project in the amount of $75,000 plus HST be approved, and further that funding for these works be included within the 2021 capital budget and 10-year capital forecast. Moved by Councillor Gordick, seconded by Councillor Fenning. All in favor? Perfect. 5 hands. That is carried. Next item is the permanent dog park location. Ms. Jackson, you're up again.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is a follow-up project to the dog park work that was done last year by Dawn Middleholtz and her team in the Clerk's Department. So I'm happy to bring this report forward. We did a second survey with the public not to determine whether or not to have a dog park, because that was already decided at the capital budget approval time, but instead to look at what the constituents were interested in with respect to types of features at a dog park and what location they preferred. The test project was held, as you're all aware, at Scott Park, and it was a very successful pilot project. There were some challenges with that site with respect to the floodplain and parking, and it is a little bit close to residential in some cases. So we wanted to make sure we were asking all of those questions about how important it is to address those issues. And as an alternative, we looked around the whole township and had difficulty finding a lot of sites that were already in a good state to be able to have a dog park. And the other site that we did come up with was the Schmidt Woods behind the Wilmot Recreation Complex. So that site was suggested because of the clear cutting last year of the the ash trees because of the emerald ash borer. And we felt that we would be able to take an acre of that property without further negatively affecting the environment to too much extent. However, there was quite a few comments about the environmental impacts in that location during the survey. And the whole intent of the survey was to really see what the community wanted with respect to the dog park and the features that were important. So we are recommending that Scott Park be the permanent location. We did a little research with some help from my friends in development services about the ownership of the property. And it is in fact mostly owned by the Grand River Conservation Authority. So I've been in touch with them regarding the management agreement that we have with them and the interest in us putting a permanent dog park on that location, and they are in support of the dog park for this area, and would like the agreement updated, as would I, since it's from the 1970s. So we'll get that work done once we get this project launched. And the other recommendation that you'll see in the report is that additional parking lot be added across from the dog park location, and we'll include that in the capital budget for 2021 and add that as a feature next year if we get approval. Sorry, my dog is barking.
Right on cue.
Yes, right on cue. He's saying to vote yes. So that's a high-level summary. There was certainly support for some things more than others. Shade is an important one, close to residential, those sorts of things. And I'm certainly happy to answer any questions of council at this time.
Okay, we shall start with Councillor Fenning.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Thank you, Sandy. And thank you to Dawn for pulling together all the very robust response from the community. And, you know, to everybody listening out there, thank you to the community for all of your responses and for engaging with us on this topic. It's really great to see when people come together to talk about something that's important to all of us. I'm very happy that the feedback regarding Schmidt Woods was heard and listened to, because while the trees are down, the soil in a forest environment is very fragile, and dogs are not so great with fragile things. They tend to trample them and tear them up. And I think it would have been, it would have caused a lot of damage that isn't necessarily apparent at the outset of a conversation. So thank you very much. And I really appreciate all the work that went into bringing this forward.
Thank you, Councillor Fenning. Councillor Hallman.
Had to find the unmute there again. Sorry about that. Through the mayor to Ms. Jackson. Thank you for this very detailed report. It was very helpful for the community to have such level of detail, and had lots of comments about that. So thank you for that. And I know that must have been labor intensive to put that together. I'm happy to see that it's remaining in a walkable space. There was lots of echoes of the community feeling heard. So I thank all the staff that were involved in that process to make sure that the community was heard. So I'm excited to see this moving forward. Hopefully, if it goes as I see it this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I'm going to echo basically what the two ladies said too. Is I had a lot of comments about people not wanting it at Schmidt Woods. No comments about Scott Park, so I think it's a good choice, and lots of shade there. Parking, hopefully you get rectified. Washrooms there, so I think it's a good choice. Thank you, and thanks again for all the hard work putting it together.
Okay, Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, to Ms. Jackson. So again, echoing what's already been said, I'm really happy to see the report come back and to thank all the staff for the hard work, especially as you mentioned, you got about 500 responses. So just getting those together, and I think it's probably one of our better attended surveys. So obviously the community is quite engaged. That being said, a couple of the comments that were on there was to do with other locations in the future. So you had already said that you had scouted out throughout the township, perhaps other places. Was there any other place, or is there the possibility going forward, because obviously Wilmot covers a large geographic area, for another dog park in the future throughout the township, maybe in the other wards, out of one of them actually asked for Lake St. Agatha, of course, which is in my ward. So I'm just wondering if there was looking forward in the future for anything like that.
Through Mayor Armstrong, certainly an interest in future capital projects is always something that we'll consider. It is definitely a large geographic area for one dog park. When we looked, we were trying to meet a set of criteria that was important to the folks who responded to the first survey in 2019. And one of those was central to a large majority of residents. Should there be interest in additional ones down the road, certainly we can entertain council's interest in that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And no further comments or questions? So the recommendation that council approve William Scott Park, 84 Bleams Road West, New Hamburg as the location for construction of a permanent dog park as approved in the 2020 capital budget, and that a future capital project be added in 2021 capital forecast to improve parking at William Scott Park pending Grand River Conservation Authority approval. Moved by Councillor Fenning, Councillor Hallman. For the comments, all in favor? 5 hands, that is carried. Thank you. Next, we're dealing with correspondence and the resolution support inkstainedwretches.org. You all have the correspondence before you? Okay, and that is the one that you have is the amended one? Oh, okay. So that Carl has to project that up for us to show you what the amendment is. So if you, it's on your screen there and line in yellow.
Tell them to read out the 6th paragraph down on your copy.
Okay, so that is the sixth paragraph down on the copy that we have.
So read out your 6th paragraph because they can't read that. That's too small.
What? They can't see that? Okay, so I'll read it so you can hopefully understand it. And whereas nearly 2/3 of Canadians agree, or somewhat agree, that because of the coronavirus COVID-19 outbreak, the federal government should treat widespread media bankruptcies and layoffs as an emergency. So if everyone has got that. So with that addition, we need a resolution to accept the amendment. Okay. So we need a mover and a seconder for the resolution, which includes the amendment. Moved by Councillor Fenning, seconded by Councillor Gerber. Any further comments or questions? Councillor Fenning?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I'm interested to know and would like to hear from this group what, if any, concrete actions we can take as a municipality to support this. This is a very respectable resolution, and I personally think that journalism is incredibly important to democracy, transparency, and accountability, and support its a vibrant community journalism in our community. Sorry, not saying my words very well here tonight. But what I'm interested in is what we can do besides, this is a nice sentiment, but is there anything further beyond acknowledging that it's
Ms. Middleholtz, did you want to address that?
I can. Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Councillor Fenning, thank you for your question. This organization, I was their contact point on this. So I think the best thing to do at this point for anything beyond the resolution here, we can certainly contact the organization. I can relay your question, and they can either get back to us with those suggestions or with some other further follow-up. But that would be my suggestion, would be for me to make that contact with them. I believe he is one of our 30-ish viewers this evening, but certainly I can make that connection.
Thank you very much.
Don't see any further comments or questions. So you have the recommendation. We have a mover and a seconder. All in favor? 5 hands. Cool. That is carried. Thank you very much. So next are bylaws, and the recommendation that bylaw number 2020-19 be ready first, second, and third time and finally passed in open council. Moved by Councillor Gordick, Councillor Fisher. All in favor? 5 hands. Thank you. Are there any notices of motion? Councillor Fenning.
Sorry, the unmuting. I do have a very short notice of motion, but I have a little preamble. So I know that we're working on a flag protocol, and like many things, I would only guess that there's been far too much else on staff's plate to proceed and bring that anywhere further along. And so because it is Pride Month, and because I think this is something that we need to act on, we need to be considering, and I don't want to put it off another year. I'm making this motion. Whereas we stand in solidarity with all residents whose rights have been disrespected, and whereas it is a simple gesture that communicates that support and solidarity, therefore be it resolved that the Pride flag shall be flown on all Township of Wilmot facility flagpoles for the month of June each year.
Thank you.
I will forward that by email to you, Don.
Very good. Thank you. So. Yep. Okay, are there any announcements? Councillor Fanning.
Sorry. I'm looking off screen because I need to read this. Over the past weeks, the Black Lives Matter conversation has been a source of hope and inspiration that has risen above the horror of violence and lives lost. Mr. Mayor, I know you to be a man who is capable of compassion and empathy. The post you made over the weekend and the subsequent comments do not display that empathy or compassion. As evidenced by the many messages and phone calls I've received, this has harmed our community. From family members and friends to co-workers and colleagues, there are many people of color who are very dear to my heart. I cannot be silent on this. We are all free to post what we like and think what we wish. It is our right. This is a free country. At the same time, we must be responsible for the impact of our actions and words. As leaders in this community, our actions and words carry even more weight. I ask you tonight to acknowledge the hurt it has caused, even if it wasn't intended, and I don't believe it was intended. But please acknowledge it and remove the post.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hallman, you have a comment? Announcement?
Actually, I also have a motion, but it was moved on past that. So I will start with my motion. Yesterday was Indigenous Peoples Day. And during our moment of silence during council, I reflected upon that. Indigenous peoples taught us about the community and are an intrinsic part of Canadian heritage. It is a day to rededicate ourselves to reconciliation and move forward together. Members of Wilmot are speaking up and want to find ways to strengthen the relationship on the basis of respect and trust. I request that council consider the following motion: that we pause any further investment and expansion of the Prime Minister's path immediately until we consult with the First Nations groups and friendship circles in Waterloo Region and any other impacted groups until sufficient, respectful, and transparent consultation process is completed with accountability. And further, I ask that this conversation include 2 elected officials of council to be part of the ongoing process and discussion.
Thank you. Councillor Gerber.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Armstrong. Yes, by way of announcement, I also want to reflect on the moment of silence this evening. I had an opportunity to reflect on the importance of anti-racism and what it means to our community and our nation and our world, especially in these times. And I thought it was an appropriate time to reflect on that, to reflect on the memo issued by our CAO, a strong anti-racism statement from the Township of Wilmot, and how appropriate that might be for that statement to be shared publicly and for council to have an opportunity to endorse that publicly as well. And also, as Councillor Hallman alluded to, National Indigenous Peoples Day on Sunday, the political act at the Prime Minister's path, which of course we must also acknowledge, and to look forward to having a conversation about how to move forward in reconciliation and in proper relationship with all the members of our community around that particular project and around the business of the township in general. So thank you for the opportunity to reflect on and share publicly the things that I was thinking about during our moment of silence today.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Yes, through you, Mayor Armstrong. I wanted to comment on the Black Lives Matters too. I know this is a time for white people and for men to listen and to learn, but I also know that my silence at this time is unacceptable. So I'd like to go on a record to say that I support Black Lives Matters and Indigenous-led justice initiatives. It is heartbreaking to see the anti-Black, anti-Indigenous racism in our society and in our own community. It is not enough for any of us to not be racist. We must learn to be anti-racist so that Wilmot can become a place where all people of color, Black, and Indigenous individuals are truly safe and valued members of our community. But words are not enough for me to bring this about. So knowing I still have a lot to learn, I will personally be donating to Black Lives Matters.
Thank you. Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. So I have a statement as well. And I also just wanted to make a comment with regards to Councillor Hallman's motion. Before it comes to the floor, obviously, I just want to mention that I am supportive of it. But one of the things to take into account with regards to conversations to sort of add to that is I've received a couple of comments from individuals where originally the statues were indicating that there would be no taxpayer responsibility with regards to those statues. And while we're very appreciative of the hard work that Mr. Cody Eby did this weekend to clean up the statues, obviously that was staff and taxpayers' dollars that had to clean that up. So we need to also take account of what's going on with the statues and be accountable to our taxpayers when we told them that that wasn't going to be an issue for them. So just to add to that. So further, I do have a statement that I'd like to read. Recently, we've seen Black Lives Matter protests around the world amplify the conversation about anti-Black racism, including here in Canada. It lifts my spirits to see that discussions taking place on our own doorstep. I'm so proud that people like New Hamburg's Olivia Miller showed leadership and initiative by attaching messages of solidarity on Hartman Bridge a couple of weeks ago. I'm also saddened, though, that someone close chose to secretly remove them the next day. I love Canada and I love the community of Wilmot. It is a privilege to live and serve here. I made this my home because it's a place that is rich with compassion and empathy, a place where we stand together for what is right. Sadly, it is not perfect. Local Black students like Brian Peralta experienced racism while growing up in Wilmot, including being the target of racial abuse from fellow students. Brian said that he was called the N-word so many times he became desensitized to it. In fact, my 15-year-old granddaughter tells me about the racist comments that she hears on the bus passing the Fennings farm on the way to school. And this causes me concern. My extended family includes people of color, some of who have also faced incidents of racism in their lives. It causes them pain and it causes me pain. I do not believe that Wilmot is a racist community, but I know that racism exists within our community. As a white person, it is not my lived experience. Nevertheless, I know that inequality is degrading and dehumanizing. As a community leader, I am privileged to have a voice and an opportunity to use it. I'm honored to have this responsibility, and I pledge to use my voice in support of those who are demanding to be heard. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did you wish to further speak, Councillor Fenning?
I'm not entirely sure I can.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hallman, did you wish to speak further? Your hand is still up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have also prepared a statement this evening on the position of Black Lives Matter. I stand in solidarity with individuals working to end systemic racism in our community. I recognize my white privilege, and I recognize it stems directly from the history of Canadian colonization. We must work together to dismantle systems that sustain discrimination and work to build something new. We need to amplify the voices that are unheard. I will listen, I will learn from you, stand alongside you, and support people of color who are proactively working to end racism.
Thank you. Well, I will need to, go ahead, Councillor Fenning.
Sorry. Thank you, Mayor Armstrong.
No, I understand.
There's one more thing that I wanted to address. We had a third migrant worker die of COVID in Ontario over the weekend. And it's yet another reason why anti-Black racism and discrimination of all kinds has to end. We have to do something about it. And we can't just continue to talk about it. We have to act.
Okay, thank you. So I understand the ire of people, but I think a lot of people misread what I've done. I did not at any point when I shared that express my belief that they were true. I do not believe the comments that were said, and I have no proof that they're accurate. The unfortunate thing about Facebook is that those things are not scrutinized and proven to be right or wrong, whether they're a farce or not. Somebody does it as a joke or not, we don't know. But I've been reading Facebook over the last few weeks, and there have been a lot of comments made similar to that by various people. And I find it frustrating that it's out there. And the reason that I shared it is, as I stated, I said, another view, it's interesting, which means that I believe there does need to be a lot more chatter and a lot more talk about this. We do need to have more discussion. We do need to erase racism. We do need to get to the point that on this planet, we understand that there is one race, the human race. That is my belief, and it always has been. And I continue to fight for that. So if my share caused people to have a conversation, that's good. And as usual, people will either take it out of context or not. It's how they determine it. And I can't change that. I know that people are going to do that. As far as yesterday's or Sunday's incident, Saturday and Sunday's incident over with Sir John A., I've been on doing press conferences all day long, and I've expressed my concern to say that people are doing things that they do not understand. They do not understand what this project is about. This project beside us, the Prime Minister's Path, is about education, about people learning what this country is all about. And part of that learning is to learn the men who created it since 1867 and to date, today, have done a job that we're all proud of this country. Certainly, there are a lot of things that we have to fix yet, but we do live in a great country that a lot of people want to come and live here. So I understand that, but we cannot allow ourselves to say, well, we'll get rid of that statue and that will erase what happened. That won't happen. What we want to do here, and it is available for people. I had an email from a gentleman today who expressed that concern, assuming, and he said that in his email, he assumed there was nothing there here to describe or outline what this is all about. And there is. People have the opportunity. There is a website that people can go to and visit and find out. And that website is all about education. There's an education program on that website, a curriculum that is created for schools to use. They can download it. Anybody can download that. And that information was created by Nipissing University, prepared by professors who teach how to teach. So they are the people that created the curriculum so that everybody can learn. And that's what this project is about. It's not about one person, not about one man. It's about 23 men, plus those that are going to come yet. So that is what this is all about, and what I want people to understand. Because if we do not teach and remember what has happened, then we tend to repeat what has happened. And that is an adage that has gone on for a long time, and people have learned that that's what does happen. So I didn't do anything to hurt anybody, because what I did was to make a conversation. What people don't know, that what they don't understand is that statue stands there. And does anybody know what the title of that statue is? I'll tell you what the title is. It's called A Canadian Conversation, which we need to have about what has gone on and what has been wrong, what has been right. The things that occurred since 1867, those things were done at a different time, and things are very much changed since 1867 in this country. It's not only, it's the attitude as well. And there's a lot of more attitude that needs to be corrected and fixed and changed and made so that we can have a whole planet full of people who are all equal and see each other equal in their everybody's eyes. So that is what we need to do. And I fully support that. And I support the idea that we do need to make sure that people are well protected and they can live their lives as we all want to. Councillor Fenning.
Accepting, Mr. Mayor, that you did not intend harm by your post, will you agree to take it down? Because that was not your intention, but because it has caused harm?
I can do that. I'm more than willing to take it down. That's not a problem. I can do that.
That would go a long way.
Now you can contact Facebook and get them to make sure they take it down as well.
We're responsible for our actions.
That's it. No further comments. So the next item is the confirmatory bylaw. Recommendation that bylaw number 2020 to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on June 2nd, 2020 be introduced, read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed in open council. Moved by Councillor Fenning, Councillor Fisher. All in favor? 5 hands, that's carried. Further recommendation is that we do now adjourn to meet again at the call of the mayor. Moved by Councillor Fenning, Councillor Gordick. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. And thank you for everyone who's tuned in this evening on through YouTube. Thank you. Everybody have a good night.